Hi, I'm Mike Sargent, and this is Arise on Screen.
Some scientists refer to this as the singularity.
Professor?
I call it transcendence.
Johnny Depp is back in the science fiction thriller Transcendence. Depp plays an artificial intelligence scientist who uploads his brain to a computer to become the ultimate operating system.
For the last time, welcome and enjoy.
The new comedy, Tasting Menu, is about fine food, lessons in love, and the closing of one of the world's greatest eateries. The film stars Stephen Ray and an international cast. We sit down with award-winning director Roger Gual to find out the best recipe for a movie about a once-in-a-lifetime meal.
Emotions are very important in the film, and I think emotions are part of the food exchanging experience.
How many times did you do it with her? More than once? Mm-hmm. This makes it official. I'm your hoe.
John Turturro plays a full-time florist and part-time male prostitute in Fading Gigolo, a new comedy about the oldest profession, with the help of his best friend and pimp, played by Woody Allen, and an all-star cast of breathtaking beauties. All this and more on Arise on Screen. Hello, I'm Mike Sargent, and welcome to Arise on Screen, your global home for films both on screen and behind the scenes. Let's get to it. First with this week's box office winners. Captain America: The Winter Soldier tops the box office this week, followed by Rio 2, Heaven is for Real, Oculus, and Divergent rounds out in the number 5 spot. And in movie news,
I'm a hip old granny who could hip-hop, bebop, dance till you drop.
More reboots, remakes, and sequels. The Hollywood Reporter says Robin Williams will reprise his hit role in the sequel to Mrs. Doubtfire. The original film grossed more than $400 million worldwide.
That rock is our pension. We should nick it.
While Pierce Brosnan isn't on board yet for the Doubtfire sequel, he and Emma Thompson have teamed up for The Love Punch, a romantic comedy with a twist. The movie is already in theaters in Europe, but doesn't have a U.S. release date yet. And the ink isn't dry on this new Hollywood deal. Jaden Smith, the son of power couple Will and Jada, will star opposite Liev Schreiber in the film adaptation of James McBride's award-winning novel, The Good Lord Bird.
I did not kill my wife. I am not a murderer.
The first glimpse of two-time Academy Award winner Ben Affleck's latest project, Gone Girl, hit the internet last week. Affleck plays a husband under scrutiny after his wife disappears without a trace.
You get as close to Letty and we'll get you shot. And you give us full pardons all the way around.
Fast and Furious stars Vin Diesel and the late Paul Walker won the MTV Movie Award for Best On-Screen Duo. Diesel didn't attend the ceremony, but sent a heartfelt message. Paul Walker's brothers, Cody and Caleb, will stand in for their late brother to help finish Fast and Furious 7.
Why do you hate God?
Hollywood is learning to be more open to faith-based films. The Christian-themed releases, God's Not Dead, Noah, and Heaven is for Real are proving themselves to be box office blessings. Hollywood power player Devin Franklin, and author of the book Produced by Faith, recently sat down with our sister show, Arise Entertainment 360.
Do you think that that's part of your calling, to bring more faith-based films to the industry, to America?
I think part of my calling is to absolutely bring more faith to the culture, without question, whether it's through
across
a movie,
the board.
Across the board.
And in festival news, the 13th annual Tribeca Film Festival began last week here in New York City. The fest was co-founded by actor Robert De Niro after 9/11 to reinvigorate the Tribeca area of Manhattan. The Tribeca Film Festival, which runs through April 27th, has become one of the most watched festivals in the U.S., offering an exciting mix of independent and mainstream film premieres. Today, I'm joined by film critic Jackson Murphy of LightsCameraJackson.com and film critic Justine Browning. Welcome back, both of you.
Thank you very much.
I'm glad you're here. So, since we're going to be talking about Transcendence, and it's an AI, artificial intelligence movie, I have to ask you both. And I'll start with you, Jackson.
All right.
What are your favorite AI movies? Do you like this genre?
I don't love this genre. I wasn't really a fan of Her or of WALL-E, my least favorite of the
Really?
Pixar movies. Yeah,
That was
I
my
did not like
favorite.
it. Really? You fell in love with Wall-E and Eve?
Well, no, but I like the movie. Go ahead.
Yeah, but I liked Rise of the Planet of the Apes because what's interesting about this film, it's not your typical action movie. It really doesn't get into that stage until the last half hour or so. But you get to really learn about how the apes become intelligent, and a good story with James Franco
consider that an
and
AI
John
movie?
Lithgow. Yeah, it's a bit of a stretch, but it works very well. Andy Serkis, terrific as Caesar.
Well, that's true. And what about you? What's your favorite?
I have to say The Matrix. I think that film took the 90s out with a bang. It took the millennium out with a bang. And I think few films could compare to it, just the originality, the style, and I think it's influenced so many films since. And I actually have to say Steven Spielberg's AI, artificial intelligence. I think that's a movie. Yes, and a lot of people didn't, but I think it's something that's going to be rediscovered in a few years.
Well, I have to say, my favorite AI movie is pretty much the granddaddy. It's called Colossus: The Forbin Project, and it's about a supercomputer that takes over our defense system. And when you see it, it came out in 1970. They've all ripped it off for years. When you see that, when you see Her, when you see any of those movies, you realize that's what it was. And it's actually being remade by Will Smith.
Ooh.
So, along with the other 13 films he's making.
Yes.
So, I'm really looking forward to talking about all these movies with you two today. I think it's going to be a good show.
Fantastic.
So, until we come back, we'll be right back.
Can you prove you're self-aware?
Coming up.
The path to building superintelligence requires us to unlock the most fundamental secrets of the universe.
In the new film Transcendence, starring Johnny Depp, Depp plays an artificial intelligence expert who creates a machine that can access the collective intelligence of all humanity. But when his experiments go very, very wrong, he must be stopped. When we return, here on Arise on Screen.
Let's see an old faculty pictures of you.
Good evening, Donald Buchanan.
It knows me.
Of course it does. DMV records, social media.
Penn, tell Agent Buchanan about yourself.
I am Penn, a physically independent neural network invented by Dr. Will Castor.
The new sci-fi thriller Transcendence, starring Johnny Depp, Paul Bettany, Rebecca Hall, and Oscar winner Morgan Freeman, is about best intentions going awry and science going too far. At the Hollywood premiere, the cast gave their take on pushing the boundaries of science.
Cloning, artificial intelligence, all that stuff, just, I can't really wrap my head around it. And so I guess I'm a little bit like the character that I play in the film, who's very much against it. I'm not as radical as she is. But.
And I think the film in itself is a cautionary tale to that effect, that, listen, if we're going to try and do this, we better tread very cautiously.
Welcome back to Arise on Screen, and I have to say, I think Morgan Freeman needs to tread cautiously because he's going to get cast as the older, smart, black guy, friend of the younger white guy in all of his movies.
But we love him anyway.
We do. We do. So I'm going to start with you, Justine, because you like this movie, but you thought you could have been better.
Like a strong word. I thought, first off, it would have worked better as a short story, maybe. It was definitely stretched into a film when it shouldn't have been. I found myself looking back on the RoboCop remake that came out earlier this year fondly after watching this.
You mean because of the relationship that was supposed to be there?
Because of the relationship in that film between Joel Kinnaman and Abby Cornish's character. Here, the relationship between Johnny Depp and Rebecca Hall, I did not get that connection or that chemistry. It did not ground the story for me in any emotional depth, where I think that's what they were aiming for. They did not succeed.
I agree with that. Jackson, you also felt one of the things I think is wrong with this film is Johnny Depp's performance. He's just being Johnny Depp.
Yeah, and he's known for being very over the top, and this is very mellow. But I got to say, when there was a point where a character hands another character secretly a note that says, "Run from this place," and that's what I wanted to do at that point during the movie. I wanted to get out of the theater because I hated it so much.
Well, you know, here's the thing. I kind of disagree with you, Justine. I thought that the mistake, there were three big mistakes with this film. I don't think it should have been a short story. This should have been a series, a TV series. Because there are a lot of big concepts that they brought in here that they couldn't explore. You had a lot of characters that they didn't develop.
They did cram a lot in.
And so it went in all these different directions. By the third act, it had fallen apart. He's creating superhumans from the earth, and how does he have these powers? I understand. Second thing, I agree with you, the relationship between him and his wife, we're going to talk about a movie later on where I much more believe their relationship than I believed Rebecca Hall. She just seemed like she was out of her mind to me. So
Johnny Depp was just staring in front of a camera the whole time.
Exactly, but you felt that it did touch upon some issues like stem cell research that were good.
It did. You know, well, for this film, I'm really interested in how it will do because it is grounded in a real gritty story, and Johnny Depp is not caked in all of this makeup and playing a character that we're already familiar with. I'll be interested to see how people turn out for this. He's usually in stories that people know.
You know, if they turn out, they'll be disappointed. Well, now, you see, you said something else that I agree with. He was so bland. You see, this is a movie where you're supposed to believe, like, when he comes back in the computer, she's with him. But because he's so, you know, I'm Johnny Depp, he's so
Evelyn,
bland.
He said Evelyn 1,000 times.
Exactly. When he comes back, you're like, all right, well, I didn't miss him because he wasn't anybody specific. So I think this movie has good ideas. Unfortunately, Wally Pfister, who won Academy Award for being the DP on Inception,
which I didn't even like.
I think if he was another director, he would have done some things to the script to give some of these characters some development.
The script was rough.
It was just chock full of nothing. So we're going to move on. Our next film is 13 Sins, a thriller starring Ron Perlman and Mark Webber. Webber plays Elliot Brindle, a social services worker drowning in debt until he receives a phone call that changes the course of his life.
All you have to do is complete 13 challenges. Swat the fly.
You're watching me now?
$1,000 will be instantly credited to your bank account.
That's it?
Now, Jackson, you really didn't like this movie. I think you liked it more. So you also felt that it was dull.
Yes.
You knew where it was going.
Yeah, absolutely. I liked the beginning portion because it's kind of like a game show. You're on this, but I knew that he was going to get through a lot of the challenges. I knew there was going to be a lot of blood, which there is. So not a lot of suspense, not a lot of surprises, and the element of fun really goes away.
Now, you, on the other hand, you were a little more engaged, and you thought you would recommend this because if you like the horror genre, you'd like this.
Well, good horror films are few and far between, as we know. So it's interesting that this came out so close to Oculus, which I thought was a good horror film.
It's in the top 5 right now.
Exactly, it's doing quite well. I think the story is grounded in I think something that a lot of people can relate to. And what's scarier than desperate times during, the recession and how far you will go for money. And so if you're watching this and you're putting yourself in the character's shoes and saying, would I do that for $1,000 or $3,000? I think that just keeps it a step above all of the other horror films.
I agree with you. I'm kind of in between. I didn't hate it as much as you did, but and I'm not a huge horror fan. I can appreciate it, but I do think the relationship. Now, the relationship he had with his wife, I believed much more than the Rebecca Hall.
I just thought the whole thing was cheesy. That's what it ended up being for me.
What's a good horror film in your opinion?
You see, I don't sit through too many horror films.
See?
You see?
I agree.
I don't need to sit through all that cheesiness and that gore and that blood.
You're a film critic.
I know, but there's so much good out there, and this is not one of those cases.
No, I'd say, I didn't. I will somewhat disagree with you. I didn't think it was really that bad. And I somewhat agree with you. I thought it was decent. I thought it was better than average.
The relationships with the fiance and the relationship he has with his brother, I think gave it something.
It did, and I thought the acting, like you did, I thought was better. And I thought the director actually kept my interest more than I could have.
Imagine.
But not for you.
No.
All right. Well, we're going to come back, and we'll be right back to talk about more movies.
I've never experienced anything like this.
Still to come, one of the greatest restaurants in the world is closing. On its final night, a select group of patrons come to dine, and it becomes the most memorable night of all. We sit down with Roger Gual, director of the new delicious ensemble comedy, Tasting Menu. Next, here on Arise on Screen.